Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we wrap up a series of 1930s horror films with Mad Love, starring Peter Lorre, directed by Karl Freund in 1935. This is Mainline episode 317. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castlebridge Media. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, currently published by Comixology. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
I have conquered science. Why can I not conquer love?
Why indeed? Why indeed? And finally, in Denver, color commentary from the one and only Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. All right. Mad Love, also released apparently some places as The Hands of Orlok, is a 1935 American horror film, an adaptation of Maurice Renard's The Hands of Orlok, the novel. It was directed by German immigrant film Karl Freund and stars Peter Lorre as Dr. Gogol, Francis Drake as Ivan Orlok, and Colin Clive as Stephen Orlok. The plot revolves around Dr. Gogol's obsession with actress Ivan Orlok, and when her husband Stephen's hands are destroyed in a train accident, Ivan brings him to Gogol, who claims to be able to repair them. As Gogol becomes obsessed to the point that he will do anything to have Ivan, Stephen finds his new hands may have made him an expert knife thrower. All right, Mad Love. I can't wait to get some opening thoughts. This one, I know this was one that was chosen by Drew, but this time, to mix it up, Drew, I will let you do the final closing thought. We'll skip mine. So let's go. Tony, Joya, and the Drew. Tony, Mad Love.
Oh, yeah, I like this movie. It's, again, in 107 minutes, it packs a lot of stuff in it.
Yeah.
Like, I love that about these 30s movies that I didn't really think about until I was watching them. Peter Lorre is just amazing. It's really interesting. It's got a pretty wide cast. You know, you've got super American, carnival guy, knife thrower, Orlok, the pianist, his beautiful wife, Peter Lorre, the mad scientist or scientist who gets more and more mad as it goes along. There's just it's so good. Beautiful black and white. Looks really great. It's also on the Criterion channel. Their print looks really, really amazing. Yeah, I really dug this movie. I can't wait to discuss it. It's plus just fantastic props, and it's almost no special effects as you think of them. But by the time Laurie's in his gear, his costume at closer to the end, that is amazing.
Yes.
So much great imagery across the board. Yeah, I really, really dug it.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Julia, this is our second time watching this. So what did you think?
It's interesting. It's very different. I feel like it's a very complex story. Like there's so many little just pieces to it here and there that, starting with the fact that she's an actress in like a horror theater that's kind of a bizarre, I don't know, just the place that she is. And then he's obsessed with her there. He's always going, Peter Lorre's always sitting in the same box, and he doesn't even know she's married. She's married to a guy who's a pianist, and he always coughs twice to tell her he loves her. Like all these little details, it just that set up these relationships and these people. And it from the get-go, you have like this, you've got these developed characters that are, pretty deeply developed. So I thought that was really interesting. And then, I like the sets. I like the story. I think it's very creepy. Again, the doctor character that Peter Lorre plays is very complex. Like he's not just a villain. He's trying to do good for people, and he's like pretty gifted, but he's also just, obviously he's got some mental issues, and I'm not sure what they are exactly, but he's clearly, when he's laughing maniacally and confessing all of his, crimes to the what he thinks is the mannequin. That's a very different character than the one who is like, just seems to be really sad that he can't be with her, but still wants to help her anyway. You know, I mean, it's just a really, I don't know. I thought there was it was very interesting. There's a lot to think about in this film.
And, you know, and it goes, what you're saying too, it goes a lot towards obsession can ruin people so badly because he's doing so much for kids.
Yeah.
And as a doctor, he's really trying to do lots of good.
Yeah, and he's not just a megalomaniac. He's not just a narcissist going, I want to do good so that everybody thinks I'm the best doctor. He literally seems to want to help at least the little girl, you know, so it's not just about, oh, look how great I am. It's very interesting. And then the whole thing with the train wreck and the surgery, just so many interesting pieces to it. It really, it kind of has layers and layers.
Wonderful. Thank you. Drew, out of all the things from the 1930s we could have chosen, what brought you to this?
This is actually the whole reason why I wanted to do a series of 1930s movies. I think this is a amazing, often underlooked movie. It's interesting in comparison, especially since we just did the Mummy, which was also directed by Freund. How much like a Universal movie this seems like, even though it's not a Universal. I think that this is a movie that has a lot of lasting reverberations and pop culture. I think the look of the Grand Guignol Theater at the beginning is very proto Tim Burton. And, you know, I have to think that was probably a big influence on him. I think that, you know, the costumings and the performances, you know, it's got an amazing cast. And, you know, Peter Lorre, this is just an astounding character that he created. You know, he's not wearing like gobs of makeup like Karloff or Lon Chaney Jr. He just shaved his head. It's because he's such an unusual looking person to begin with that he's able to create this amazing horror character, acting mostly with his face. Mm-hmm. And I just find it, you know, fascinating to watch. I think nowadays, you know, there's stuff that you can look at this as, you know, when I watched it again today with Jamie, we both talked a lot after we were watching it about how this kind of has a feel of maybe incel outrage in it, even though, you know, obviously, you know, that was not on anybody's mind back in 1935. But this is a spectacular movie, and it may be close to a perfect horror film. And I want to bring more people's attention to it, because I think when people talk about vintage horror, this is one that doesn't get brought up nearly enough, despite the fact that it is a visual feast and with amazing performances in it.
Yes. I agree with everything you said. I think visually this is amazing. I think it's got an amazing bad guy. I think it has a plot that is resonant today. Just as much as it was in the 1930s. You could transport this to a modern script. I can't imagine it would be greatly improved if you did so, because, as Tony mentioned, it's extremely compact and works a whole bunch of stuff into this tight little film. So I was happy all around with this. We keep running into these movies where other studios are doing a Universal thing at the same time that Universal was doing its thing. And I don't think I was aware how well they were doing them, you know, except for that, of course, we saw MGM doing, you know, Dr. Jekyll. And now I think this is MGM as well, right? Doing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So all of which to say that MGM is giving Universal the run, its run for the money.
Well, by scalping some of Universal's talent.
True. That's true, because Karl Freund here directed The Mummy, didn't he? And,
yes.
And Colin Clive is, of course, Dr. Frankenstein. Do you know something else about Colin Clive, I have to say? Colin Clive played Rochester in Jane Eyre in 1934, which I have not seen. It was the very first Jane Eyre in sound. And you know, so I'm really looking forward to catching that. I'll probably try and catch it sometime this week, because I'm dying to see, you know, what, because I looked up what does Colin Clive look like as Rochester, and it looks great. It looks really good. Colin Clive, who will not live 2 years beyond this film, because he dies of tuberculosis, and one of his pallbearers will be Peter Lorre. So you know, it's interesting. This is a very late film for Colin Clive, who leaves us too soon. All right, so when we open, we are at Julia. You mentioned the Theater of Horrors, which Drew called Grand Guignol. First of all, I know you majored in French, so tell us how to say Grand Guignol, because I don't know how.
Yeah, I would say it like that, but I don't know. It doesn't matter
Okay.
because it's English.
And tell us about how we meet Yvonne and how Dr. Gogol has come into her life.
So we see her, she's getting ready for, I guess, I'm trying to remember if she's even getting ready. I know we open with a bunch of people, kind of around this theater, and this woman going, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that you brought me here. This is horrible," or whatever. And then you have her in her dressing room with her maid, and she's like, "Okay, you keep listening to the radio. My husband's gonna, whenever he coughs twice, that's his telling me he loves me." And then she goes to go do her acting thing, and of course he coughs twice, and the maid's like, "Oh, that's great." And then she goes on to do her scenes, and she's being like branded and tortured and all these things in this scene. And then we see that Peter Lorre's there, and he's always there, and they're like, "Who is this guy? Like, how do we not? We should know him."
And he
He's always
seems
there.
ecstatic to be
Yeah.
watching her. Like when he sees her being tortured, and he
he's
clearly finds it very exciting. Yeah,
he is low key until the end of the movie, like a sadist, and which is interesting because it's also implied that he's a virgin. So you have this like guy that has apparently some kind of sexual kink about him without ever having sex. And when Julia and Tony were talking about how these are like such complex characters, like that, like right off the bat, like that he has this sort of orgasmic kind of look on his face while she's being tortured.
yes.
Just a couple of years after this movie came out, there's no way they would have gotten away with that.
Interesting.
Well, it's not just that she's beautiful, it's that she's beautiful and being tortured. That's he didn't go to an opera and see a beautiful woman. He went to a horror show, and then decided like, "Oh yeah, this is for me.
This is for me." Yes.
Here's the thing about that too. I think this is one of the earliest horror films I can think of that is sort of commenting. It started to get more commonplace from like the 1970s on, where you would have horror movies commenting on horror as a genre. But this is like maybe the earliest one I can think of that's actually kind of like putting it out there like, hey, if you enjoy this, there might be something a little bit odd about you, because in this moment, maybe not throughout the entire movie, but in this moment, Peter Lorre represents you as the viewer who is getting off on watching this movie. And I think that's fascinating, because I cannot think, if it exists, please somebody tell me, but if there is another movie that is sort of making meta commentary on horror itself, that's this early, I can't think of it.
No, I can't. I can't either. Although I have to say that the funny thing is there are several of these characters that illustrate human foibles, and they're always distinct from one another. Like his Laurie's foibles, but besides his arrogance, which we'll talk about, there's this sexual thing. Whereas the reporter has his own foibles, which is basically that he's a sensationalist. He doesn't give a shit about what anything means. He just wants to get good ink. He wants to, like, if something violent happens, he wants to make sure that he's getting a chance to take advantage of it. They've each got these distinct character traits. Okay, but so here in the theater, we very quickly introduce Yvonne, her maid, and the fact that she's married to her handsome husband that they're listening to on the radio. This is, once again, we are in the contemporary world of the 30s, just like with the Mummy. So we get to see her wearing some swell 1930s outfits. There's a thing that Frances Drake, the actress, changes into after her performance when Dr. Gogol shows up to chat with her backstage. And she changes into this 1930s woman's suit that is reminiscent of a riding habit. It is really cool. I mean, it's a cool outfit. And, she even has poses that she does with it that remind you of something out of like a catalog, with her arms crooked up and hands in the pockets of the jacket. This is we are not in the Gothic territory here. We're in like fun, fashionable Paris, basically.
Although a Paris that is not French, really, and most of the people don't have French accents. Most of the actors
Correct.
don't even attempt them. In fact, I think
and thank God.
when you talk about the report, I think when you talk about the reporter and you talk about Rollo the knife thrower, I think which is funny. I often wonder is if their way to compensate for the lack of Frenchness and this fairy tale version of France, is by making the Americans super American, they're stereotypes of American. Like if you were to tell like somebody like doing an impression of American, you probably would get something close to an approximation of this, especially during this time period.
Ted Healy, who plays the reporter, and he plays it like, "Hi, I'm a reporter. I talk really fast and just like this." Yeah, he's fabulous and so American, and the other guy talks like a gangster, and whereas all of our heroes talk with this weird mid-Atlantic kind of English accent.
British-esque.
It's very much the universal horror. Yeah. This is Europe, but it could be anywhere.
Yeah,
and it's contemporary, but it's also kind of not, because you're talking about the clothes, like you say it's not Gothic, but it is universal Gothic, which is,
I guess you're right, with the big sweeping
staircases and all the shadow
and the vaulted ceilings and all of that. So I apologize. I guess what I'm saying is we're not thing. Yes. Okay, fair enough. Drew, since you're talking, Gogol, who has been in this box, so he comes in and what is he? Well, he explain to me the conversation that he has with Francis Drake.
Well,
he
it
says,
starts out.
Come away with me. I mean, what's going on? I can't remember what it is.
He doesn't even get to that point. It starts out innocently enough. He just is like, "Hey, I've come to rely on seeing you. Like I'm a fan. Blah blah blah." And then she's listening to her husband's concert, and she's like, "Well, this is going to be my last show. I'm going away to England with my husband on my honeymoon," and he kind of mumbles around the word husband, and this is kind of our first.
Yeah, he gets like 3 pieces of bad news at once: that she's married, that she's leaving, and that she's not going to be performing anymore. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is a lot of things I have to suddenly."
Well, that's another thing that I'd love to know. How many times this was commented on in Hollywood, and there were certainly movies like What Price Hollywood and stuff like that, but where you're commenting on an actress, a beautiful woman, a beautiful, talented, smart woman who is married and has her own damn life to live, and these people who feel like because they get to see her all the time and because they pay money to support her, that means that they're entitled to a piece of her life.
Well, it doesn't help that they actually let people kiss her at this party.
Well, right. There's also some gender stuff that's just sort of gross and of its time. The most powerful acting that Frances Drake, the actress, does here, I think, early on, is when they're at that party. Peter Lorre has gotten all the bad news. They go to the party. They're doing this celebratory thing where people are going to kiss her, and he does a really improper, like heavy duty kiss, and she has to just sort of shake it off, because yes, he basically sexually assaulted her, but she's got to like kind of stiff up her lip.
They don't believe in that.
We don't believe in that. Yeah. Fascinating. I mean,
not only do they not believe in it, but they encourage it because they're like, "Come on, who else wants to kiss?"
Who else wants to kiss?
He's their public.
Yeah,
he represents their public. They actually say that, and
yeah.
I even turned to Jamie when we were watching it today, and I was like, that's still, unfortunately, the way a lot of things are, where it's like a performer, and I've seen this, with Jamie with crowds, you're expected to put up with a lot more bullshit than the male performers are. Mm-hmm. I've seen people, think it's okay to like grab at her breasts or say lewd things. Not that Laurie says anything lewd, but the way he behaves is lewdly, and it's really, you can have empathy for this guy to a point, because Laurie plays him with this sort of downtrodden patheticness to him. But then when you see stuff like that, there's something deeply wrong with this guy, that he thinks that he's entitled to this woman. You know, he deserves her.
Very good. Yes.
He deserves her because he's such a miraculous surgeon.
Yeah.
And because he's such a big fan. Like, he's been there every night, you know, he worships her. And so, yeah.
Oh,
yeah, it's that whole, well, I paid all this money. It's like, well, yeah, but so did everybody else. That's your choice, right?
Right.
That's the real, and that's what people think. Like, I gave to your cause, or even now, like, you know, with Twitch and such like that. Why? You know, I subscribe to your channel. I did this. Like, okay, cool, but that's not what that's for.
Yeah.
It's not that entitlement is not, you don't get that. And, you know, there's a certain subset of the populace that sees, well, you owe me this. And even, you know, at the upper levels of that entertainment industry, you get what people are doing at this party. Well, you'll have some studio exec or handler or somebody, and there's a fan, and somebody will go, hey, I don't feel comfortable around this person.
Yeah.
And they'll go, well, yeah, but they're your public. Like, you know, it's what harm could it be? Those people are terrible. And hopefully, you know, it'd be nice if they were weeded out. But as far as enablers, you know, because you can go, oh, you know, they're not feeling well. We're afraid you're going to catch cold. There's any number of things you can do that aren't, well, what's it going to hurt?
Yeah.
And that's the disgusting, terrible part of that.
And it's not just men, it's women too. Women will say, you know, oh, come on, that's just how boys are. You just got to go along with it, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not.
Well, you know, the one thing that has really caused me a great deal of confusion, like, you'll think about something and then, like, good confusion, where you think about something and you flip it over and you think about it in a different direction. And I was thinking about how we think of stars as being, in a way, not quite human. You know, so that, you know, and she's a star, because this is like not a universe with movies. She's a star, and her husband's a star. So they're like a super couple in a sense. And when we think of these people as not human in a way, whereas, you know, if it's your teenage sister who works as a greeter at a department store and somebody just grabs her and kisses her, you'd get really enraged. But somehow if it happens to a famous person, you think, well, you know, they're like super sophisticated, so they have like special powers for like shrugging this stuff off. They have armor that the rest of us don't have. And that's not true.
It's also this idea that, you know, people that are in the theater are more, you know, should be more sexually free. Like I you know, when I used to be around burlesque shows, I used to see this more often, is like somebody's assuming because you're a performer like that you're just okay with being grabbed, and you're not. You know, like it is, you know, what we expect. You know, it's what Tony was saying, is like people think just because you paid the price of admission that you actually own a bit of this performer, and that's just not how it works.
Yeah, boy, that's amazing. So it goes on. So that's where we begin, and that sets everything up in like 10 minutes. This conversation backstage, and then the party, where for the first time we see that he does have that Gogol, Dr. Gogol does have, you know, the strength of will such that he's liable to do some disturbing stuff when he kisses her. Okay, she's retired. They're going to go, you know, off on their honeymoon. And Colin Clive, her husband, the pianist, is on his way to Paris. And then there is, you know, there's some business where we meet some people, including this American knife thrower. And
well,
then,
I mean, that's important though, because
go ahead. Why don't you walk us through it, Tony? The business on the train, because
we meet. You know, a guy who's an autograph hound, as well as you know, is he a journalist? I can't remember.
We meet. Colin Clive is sharing a box, a train car with this just dude who's just a regular friendly dude with a dog and sausages. And
well, he's also an autograph hound.
And he's autograph hound, yeah.
And I just couldn't remember exactly why. Like I know I've seen this twice. I'm terrible, but anyway, so they have some business. But the main thing is there's a murderer who's going to be put to death, and they're escorting him. Once they find out, he's like, oh, I got to get his autograph. Oh, this is going to be great. The guy has a great, East Coast accent, I guess,
The gangster. Yeah, Rollo.
And, he's always been this kind of crass guy. But I love, he's a great character too, because he fully accepts everything he's done.
Yeah.
He's unashamed of being a murderer, but to him, he did it for a good cause. And to the point as he's being led to the guillotine, he asks, "Oh, what about that dam? What about? I heard this stuff." Like, he's accepted his fate.
Yeah.
We get to see his knife throwing skills as he decides that he's had enough of our autograph hound.
Yeah.
And and then there's a train wreck. But that business is some really great character business from everybody involved.
You know who this actor is? His name is Edward Brophy, and if you've ever seen Dumbo, then you've heard him before because he's the voice of Timothy Q. Mouse,
Right.
the little mouse that gives all the wisdom to Dumbo. But when he's when he's led to the guillotine, it is wonderful. That's a great scene. Okay.
Well, the whole like, boy, look at that. Like,
yeah,
he's more unhinged, I think, than Laurie in a way, because he has that sort of looking at something he knows is going to chop off his own head with like this sort of like childlike thing, but it's like a more low key kind of unhinged
detachment. And
yeah,
I actually really respected him. I mean, he's a criminal and a murderer, but like the guy goes, "Tough break, kid," and he goes, "Yeah, well, it's all, it's going to get us one way or the other or something." It's this.
Yeah, we all get it in the neck in the end or something like that.
Yeah, fabulous.
I mean, this is a person. It's a strange thing because he both is fully aware of life and his own choices.
Yes.
Right. He's just, this is exactly who I am at this moment.
Yes.
And it's a pretty amazing, there's a pretty amazing choice there,
Yeah.
He's not going to fight it. Hey, I'm a murderer. What else? I mean, you get the, you get taken, if you get caught, you get put to death. What?
You're going to go to the guillotine.
I threw a bunch of knives and that was really great. Like I traveled around, whatever.
Yeah.
It was a crime of passion. He's the most possibly honest person in the whole movie.
Yeah.
And that's its own kind of strange thing.
There's a zen
the breadth
to
of
it.
Characters is really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking
he's also got a great look. Like, I think if they did this now, you would have some like muscled up, tattooed guy that and maybe that's more of a modern thing, but I like the fact that he's big and imposing, but not in like a bodybuilder kind of way, which I think is kind of cool.
No, absolutely. He's right. He's not a gigantic dude with like tattoos on his neck and everything. No. And then there is while Francis Drake and Ted Healy, the reporter, is waiting to meet the gangster, and Francis Drake is waiting at the train station to meet her husband, and then it's a very effective scene where we start to see people running, and there's a hubbub. The news has reached the Paris train station, and the news is that the train has derailed miles up the line on the way in, and so it's madness. People are running around. The two characters we're following grab a cab together and head to the location of the train wreck. I don't know, from the 1930s, Drew, this looks like an impressive train wreck. I mean,
the sets here. This is the place that MGM definitely could give Universal a run in their money with. Like the set here is awesome. Like just like it's so detailed and the one thing, we were just talking about the knife thrower character. The one thing though that I guess you wouldn't have the cool scene at the guillotine, but I've always thought you could have you could have shaved about 5 minutes off of this if you had the knife thrower die in the train wreck. But he survived. He survives the train wreck only to have to go get his head chopped off.
I think that's kind of magical too. Like, for economy's sake, you could do that, but I think it's really great that, and I think it's a cool juxtaposition that the good guy loses his hands, the bad guy loses his head, and you kind of have to have that too, because the mix up later on, which it's kind of played for comedy between the reporter and the housekeeper. But
Yes.
I think it's interesting. One person survives only to have his fate just kind of moved.
Yes.
And you have somebody else who's most people would think, rightly so, that he's more of a benefit to society, but now his tragedy is perhaps even more is felt even more, because what are you? I mean, I have hand stuff wigs me out, because
Really?
how else am I going to play bass, right?
Yeah.
Like, I get it. So yeah, you could make it more economical, but again, at 107 minutes, I think it's okay because they give us some great bits. But also, he's a fresher corpse at that point too, which makes more sense at the time.
Yes. It all it all goes together so quickly that I can't even. I'm having a difficult time remembering the order of things. But basically, at the same time that Dr. Gogol is expected to go and view the guillotining of Peter Lorre, at the same time that Frances Drake is learning the news that her husband, the famous pianist's hands are crushed. And so at the last minute, the idea comes to her, I think from the maid actually, which is go to Dr. Gogol. He might be able to help you because he's a genius. He's a genius. And, and so it all comes together real quick. When she finally gets through to him, and when at the clinic, Dr. Gogol's supporting surgeon, played by Key Luke, says, well, you're right. It's impossible to fix those hands. Finally, his sort of Gallic pride kicks in, and he goes, no, I am French. There is no such thing as impossible.
Don't tell me something's impossible.
Napoleon said that word is not French.
Right. Yeah. By the way, it should be noted that he treats his nurse like shit.
My God, he never says I'm sorry. Like he'll say something, the nurse will go, oh well, you misunderstood something, and he'll go, oh, and he'll take it, but he never is like, sorry, didn't mean to treat you like a. I mean, no, he's a jerk to his nurse.
I'm sure that goes into the whole thing. Like, you're here to be the nurse. I am the doctor.
Yeah, he's I don't know, narcissist. I don't know. But what we do know is he's extraordinarily arrogant.
He's at least got a god complex of sorts.
Yes,
like, and although he's kind of got shades of Jekyll and Hyde in the, like Julie was talking about. There does seem to be like a sincere desire to help.
Yeah. But
then he flips, and he's got this like sadism to him, and like even him helping Stephen Orlak. That's a twofold thing there, because he knows he's saving him, quote unquote, to impress Orlak's wife. He
wants the wife to be indebted to him.
Yeah, but he knows he's grafting these murderers' hands onto her husband's body, and on some level, there's like a little bit of like, well, I'm going to ruin you for even if it's on like a subconscious level.
Well, not just that, but as he's doing it, he keeps going, oh no, it's going to take a little more time, so that they're together more.
Yeah. Right. He makes the recovery probably worse than maybe it has to. Who knows? But the impression we're given is that he's taking advantage of the fact that the recovery from this will be very long, and it will bring them closer together, and also it will bankrupt her, because she will end up spending all of her money on all the recovery that Colin Clive is going to need. By the way, before we get past him, Key Luke, who plays Dr. Wong, is, we would know him from Gremlins. I mean, I would mainly know him from Gremlins. He was the grandfather who sold the Mogwai. And
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, he had a very long career. Yeah,
he was Master Po in Kung Fu. He was #1 son in the Charlie Chan films. I mean, this guy was around a long time, and he died.
He's great too. He's such a great foil for Peter Lorre.
Yes,
the way that he approaches it, kind of the way they bounce back and forth. Talking about how we're going to do the surgery. And it's interesting too, because he seems a little bit more detached in some ways. Mm-hmm. about their work, but that also allows him to kind of call him out a little bit.
Is the fact that
a lot.
I'm dying to know if his status as an Asian doctor is unusual for an MGM film, for any non-white doctor, or if this is just common. Do we just see Asian doctors all the time in 1935?
I've watched quite a few 1930s movies, and to see an Asian actor playing a relatively straight character like this is pretty progressive.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was.
He's completely straight. It's blind casting. He's just a random guy. He's just another doctor.
He's just a doctor, and he's not even an insane doctor. That's the only doctor that is insane in this movie is Gogol.
Yes. Yeah.
Unlike a lot of other horror films of this time period, which are we just did Dr. X, which is like filled to the brim with mad scientists.
Yeah. There's no a typical trope would be when you learned in the East, I bet you did blah blah blah. Like you would expect. There's a lot of that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like, we're gonna cast this Asian actor, and because of that, he's gonna lend a flavor to our movie.
Yeah, there's no exoticism.
There's nothing like he's just a really competent, as far as we know, second only to this genius and maybe his peer. They always kind of play it that Gogol is top of his field. Maybe this guy's learning a little bit more from him, but it is pretty interesting to see that in a 30s film.
Yeah.
Just this guy is here to be this really great doctor, and that's his character.
Yes.
And that doesn't always happen during this time period.
Laurie, we should mention
anyway.
Peter Lorre playing Gogol himself. So he was German, came to the United States, at least says Wikipedia, when Hitler came to power, and started making. So his second English language film was M, which I know that there's always the possibility we could get around to doing M. So this is still early, in his career, and he will become, even though he doesn't live past 1964, so he doesn't live a long time. He lives to 59. But Peter Lorre, I'm hard pressed to think of many actors who just imprint themselves on the vocabulary of Americans the way Peter Lorre did.
Well, he's also he's recognizable enough as a character actor, as an actor.
Yeah.
He ends up in Looney Tunes. He ends up being parodied and those are the people, like when you have icons who are portrayed in Looney Tunes shorts at the time. That's kind of, to me, I think where you've made it.
Everybody can crack out their Peter Lorre impression.
What I find odd about Laurie is like a pop culture icon, though, is that people always falsely identify him with the character of Igor.
Yeah,
which
why is that?
He did. I don't know why. I guess because he did play sort of degenerate sidekick roles in a few movies, but never a hunchback, never an assistant to a mad scientist. Poor Bela Lugosi. When we did Son of Frankenstein, poor Bela Lugosi doesn't get his credit for an amazing character in its own right, but
I think what it is, Drew, is that when people think of an Igor character, their first thought, for reasons I can't quite put my finger on, is to do a Peter Lorre impression. In other words, I don't think that they think Peter Lorre played Igor. I just think they think, for some reason, that in the great cinema of the mind, Peter Lorre is that guy. I guess
he would have been great. I think if he had played that part, he would have been terrific.
Yeah.
He would have made a great of the time Gollum.
Absolutely.
The time and space has to shift a little bit for that to happen, but the way he gets into those characters would have been amazing.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, I mean, so much so, like the Honest trailers, they made a joke when they did their Aladdin Honest trailer about the fact that Robin Williams includes a Peter Lorre impression in his shtick as the genie, and they said, this movie came out whenever Aladdin came out in the 90s, I guess. And they said that's what kids today love, is a Peter Lorre impression, but it doesn't matter. It's so far beyond a Peter. In other words, it's somehow just entered I called it the vocabulary, the consciousness of Americans. Yeah, it's in the same way that people do a Bela Lugosi impression, they do Peter Lorre, which is just wild, considering that this is nearly 100 years old.
Well, again, before I really knew Peter Lorre, I knew the Looney Tunes version of Peter Lorre.
Yes.
But it was immediately recognized because
that was Dr. Jekyll, right? Didn't they have basically a Peter Lorre Dr. Jekyll? I think.
I can't remember the exact.
Yeah,
that sounds familiar, but I'd have to look up exactly which short that it was.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of actors that they would, put into, I don't even know if they probably got likeness rights at the time.
Right.
But probably not. But that was just part of like, we're gonna do something Hollywood. These are the characters that are in our kind of pantheon of characters we could do recognizable. And they look great animated,
Yeah,
you can do.
Well, Peter Lorre has such an amazingly expressive. All the acting he does with his face, and like I want to talk more about this scene when we get to it, but like the fact that he can be so terrifying, doing so, just cocking an eyebrow here and there, but like I can't think of like one of the most nightmarish scenes in 1930s horror is when he's pretending to be Rollo in that getup, and he's acting mostly with his teeth right there, and he's so scary.
Yes, no, that's an excellent point. In fact, I almost want to. So let's see if there's anything that we need to touch on really quickly. So we do this expensive surgery. So Colin Clive is not yet able to play, and he discovers that he's getting angry, and he briefly loses his cool when he goes to beg his rich father for money with a knife. He throws a knife through a window, but how does it get introduced? Oh yeah, and that gets us to the scene you're talking about. So Drew, wrap it up. Get us to that scene where the disguise comes in. Which, by the way, if there was an action figure for Dr. Gogol, this would be the action figure.
By the way, before this, sorry, Drew, but before this, we do get a lot of Orlok going, I can't play piano. That's really super messed up for me. I can't get my hands to work, but I can throw knives like the Dickens. It's a lot of confusion on why am I throwing knives at people? The bill collectors come and he goes, "Get out."
Yep.
And scares
Jesus it's super. It's super terrifying if your body parts are doing things that you're not controlling with your mind. That's horrible.
He's like, I can't play piano now. That's ruined. Like he's distraught. I mean, that's his life up until that point. But he realizes that knife throwing is like nobody's business to him right now.
Okay, so what is the truth, by the way? Because are we actually led to believe that the pseudoscience here is that's a thing?
The hands have a mind of their own.
The hands want to throw knives?
He has evil hands.
He has evil hands.
Which is funny because it's like the only quasi-supernatural thing in this movie. Mm-hmm. Like everything else in this movie.
Yeah, it's not really a horror movie.
Well, I mean, it is a horror movie, but like it's not like a horror movie in the same way like Frankenstein is or Dracula.
Well, also remember, I guess in Drew's universe, a thriller is just a horror movie with no monsters, basically.
Well, also like I don't think horror is a very broad genre, and I don't think something has to have like for example, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Everything in it is technically possible. It's presented in an outlandish way,
right?
Like some of the stuff in this is technically impossible, and it's still kind of presented in this sort of like fairy tale way. But it's not impossible like the way Dracula is. Like you just said, it's like there's this. I would definitely call this a mad scientist movie, which is a type of horror film. But I always wrinkle my nose when somebody's like, "Oh, a horror movie has to have zombies or werewolves or ghosts or something in it," because there's a lot of truly great scary stories that have none of that kind of things in it, and this is one of them, because I think this is actually still a very effectively frightening movie. And, certainly the idea that your own, like Julie was just saying, that your limbs could be rebelling against you is a scary idea. then there's there's the manipulative qualities into it. It's like, Colin Clive's character is terrified of what's going on, so he goes to Dr. Golgol because he doesn't know. We as the audience know that Gogol is obsessed with his wife, but Orlak himself does not know. He just thinks, okay, here's this super helpful genius doctor that has saved my hands. Which, by the way, kudos to the makeup department. I don't know what they did to his hands.
Yeah,
but
that was
his hands, they look gnarly, don't they?
Yeah. Also, they're slightly bigger. It seems like.
Yeah.
I kept thinking of the Everlong
It's like they put
video.
gloves. Maybe they put a glove on it or something.
That's the only thing I can think of. I can't find anything about how they did it online, but every time I watch it, I'm curious about, I was like, what do you think the method was here?
Probably just a glove.
I imagine that's right. It's probably not dissimilar to what they did for Lon Chaney Jr. and the Wolfman, but instead of hairy clawed hands, big puffy hands. But I love the scene where he goes in there and he's like begging him, and Dr. Golgol is just like, no, you're just in shock. You're just in shock. There's nothing wrong with your hands. You certainly don't have the knife thrower's hands. It's all in your mind.
That's gaslighting again. I was telling Jason, even speaking of movies that aren't necessarily horror movies, but are creepy as hell, I think we should do Gaslight as a podcast film, because I think we talk about the term gaslighting all the time, and it's really comes from that.
But we haven't done Gaslight. No, you're right. We should probably add it to the calendar.
Here, he's totally messing with him.
Yeah.
Well,
those are absolutely your hands.
It's when then when he leaves, it's like that's suddenly where he gets his whole idea. Like, he was like, oh. He's talking to Dr. Wong, and he's like, oh, if he has any further shock, it'll break his mind. And it's like right then and there, like the wheels start like turning, and you have that whole scene where he's about to like operate on the little girl. Yeah. And it's really twisted.
So who can somebody give us that sequence? Because the next sequence is just after he's gotten this idea, hey, maybe I could drive Colin Clive crazy and then get his wife for myself. There's a scene involving him as a super doctor. He has to do surgery on a little girl. I mean, Julia, do you want to like? Well, he
completely just goes into this weird like catatonic place where he just drops the knife and the scalpel after. So part of his mental illness is that he keeps having he keeps hearing a voice, which is himself, and often and sometimes actually not himself. Sometimes it's actually what's her name, the Francis, but whatever. What's the character's name?
Yvonne.
Yvonne. Well, anyway, sometimes it's Yvonne, but most of the time it's him, and so he'll hear himself saying, I can't remember what the line is in this case, but, just saying, come on, you got to do this other thing, and like some dastardly plan. So in this case, he just kind of goes off into this catatonic place, drops the scalpel, walks off, and he's hearing the voice telling him what he needs to go do. So he's definitely battling some.
Let's walk it back.
Mental illness.
We haven't talked about how he bought the wax dummy, the wax work figure.
Right.
Yeah, we have not yet mentioned that.
By the way, not only did he get this wax figure of Yvonne, she's perfect. Like, I'm like, what, did they do a cast of her somehow? Or, like, did they get a hold
Most
of
the time when it's a close up, it's just Francis Drake.
No, I don't mean the movie. I mean him. I mean, how did he get such a perfect wax figure of this woman? Anyway, yes.
He bought it. They're like, well, I guess we don't need this. This is, goes outside, because he's also, I mean, that's how we're introduced to him is, some random drunk guy is like, baby, I love you. How dare you talk to this wax figure that way? I'm obsessed with her.
But I just want to know where you go to get, who do you order such a beautiful wax figure from?
I don't know if you noticed, Julia, but they were getting rid of it because she's leaving the cast.
Right.
And so he said, I'll give you 100 francs if you just deliver it to my house.
So they already had it. In the theater.
It's the same statue that was in the beginning.
I thought he had it made. Okay,
gotcha.
No. Yeah, I missed that part.
It was up front at the beginning, and that's when he almost beats the crap out of that guy, because he's like, how dare you talk to this wax figure? I'm going to go see her for real. And then later on, when he sees them hauling out, he's like, I get my own version of her that I can have her hair brushed
Okay.
and
I didn't
play,
understand that that's what that was.
Oh,
Yes,
and
that's perfect. That makes more
play
sense.
organ to it, which I noticed. I wonder if the set dresser for Dr. Phibes was influenced by this organ with the mirror, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and also there's an homage to the movie that we watched the other day, The Mummy, when she goes, "It went for a little walk."
Karl Freund paying homage to himself.
Himself, yeah.
And then, you know, because also this creates this kind of banter where the reporter tries to get in, and the drunken housekeeper, who's really kind of a little freaked out, and probably why she drinks so much, that she has to do things for her employer, like take care of the wax dummy and brush its hair. And so there's, you know, a whole thing where like, oh, his head, oh yeah, it brought this thing in here. And there's a whole thing where he thinks
the scene where there's some kind
the
of
headless
misunderstanding
murderer has been brought to the house, or he knows, but he's trying to figure out like what the head was.
Well, yeah, because he's heard that this guy stole the body of the corpse, and so he's like, "Did you see a body get brought here?" And she's like, "Yeah." And then he's like, "Well, I forget if he asked like, was it missing a head, or does he have the head?" And you're like, "Yeah, no, the head's there, of course." Yeah, I have to brush the hair and everything, and they're talking about two different people. It's pretty funny.
He keeps locked in the room where he plays organ music to woo this. It's so, and that's where it really, that leads to the obsession part where he
wants to be
out.
He calls her Galatea, and
yeah.
You know, and the only bit with the comic relief of the drunk maid, she's fine. You know, it's a short movie, so we don't have to suffer with her very much. But there is one funny scene that she's in, which is where she's drinking hard, and Yvonne comes to the door because she wants to talk to Dr. Gogol. And the drunk maid goes to the door and opens the door, and there she is, and she goes, "How did you get out?" and grabs her.
Brushes her back upstairs.
That is actually really funny.
I like all the stuff with the comedy maid. I have a soft spot for that kind of thing. It reminds me of a lot of the bits in the, you know, James Whale,
for sure.
Yeah, Bride of Frankenstein. Or the Invisible Man, you know, like, you know, I believe the actress that was in those movies is Uda O'Connor. I could be now I want to know this. Hold on.
Oh, by the way, I just remembered too. There's in pop culture, also in Scooby-Doo, there was a Peter Lorre character as one of the villains.
Really?
Of course.
And one of the snow ghost one, I think it is.
Huh.
It's been a while since I've watched Scooby-Doo.
Una O'Connor. Okay, my memory's not that bad. There we go. I like all the stuff with the comedy maid. Like I like that kind of thing. I don't know.
We've seen it a lot, right?
Taste.
I mean,
especially in horror films from this time period, because they firmly believe that you had to have this stuff to break up the tension. And of course, again, you alternate from. We haven't again. I really want to talk about the scene where he pretends to be Rollo. From something that looks like that, which to me is pretty heavy stuff for this time period, even compared to a lot of the stuff that's going on, over in the Frankenstein films at Universal. Like there's just something about Laurie and that getup with like the neck brace. And like the way he just laughs.
Instead of skipping to this is it. So go ahead and tell us from the beginning. How does he wind up in that costume?
Well, I mean, he comes up with the idea that he's gonna basically crack Colin Clive. Mm-hmm. And he sends him a note. He murders Colin Clive's dad or stepdad. They keep alternating between stepdad and dad. But his father off screen, and then he sends a note to him saying that meet with me, and then Colin Clive,
jackass, by the way.
Yes,
huh? His dad is a jackass. He is a total prick. So Colin Clive comes to meet him at this location, and Peter Lorre has like a slouch hat on. He has dark glasses and a big trench coat, and then he stabs a knife into the table with these big metal gloves on, and he starts claiming like, "I am Rollo, the knife thrower, and you have my hands, but you know." And Colin Clive is like, no, your head was cut off, and he's like, yes, but Dr. Golgo is smart, and he put it back on, and then he opens up his coat to reveal this neck brace, and he's like, like this horrible laugh through these like gritted teeth.
It's brilliant.
It's
really
so creepy.
When he's got a hat and he's got like glasses, so you can't tell who it is exactly. Yeah. It's super creepy.
Up until that point, like even the stuff that he's doing with his voice, because like the idea is like, you know, it's somebody whose head's been cut off and it's put back on, so he's speaking in this kind of raspy voice. Is, you know, like the level of thought out, you know, how thought out this was for something that's essentially a con job.
It's an excellent point when you consider this is not a persona that he plays around with for any other scenes. This is the only one. And yet, boy, is it genius. I mean, like I say, this is a monster. This is a character that would be good as a Mego figure, you know? And, I you know, in fact, there may very well be a Mad Love figure out there.
Well, you know what I remember this get up from is there used to be, before Joe Bob Briggs had Monster Vision on TNT, there was a show that they had that was kind of the original, like before there was Monster Vision, they had their another horror cult movie show called 100% Weird, and they would have the opening credits was Peter Lorre, you know, opening up his coat, and the logo for the show would be in this. But for the longest time, until I was able to see this movie, I was like, what the hell am I seeing here? Because it is such an arresting image. And, you know, again, kudos to Peter Lorre, mostly acting with his face. Like, you know, and in here mostly just with his teeth. So like,
although you gotta love, I mean, that's a super villain costume if ever there was.
It's
one.
Brilliant. Yes, with
the metal hands and just, you know, I'd send it to you guys. It reminds me of this Choose Your Own Adventure. They called them fighting fantasy books. There's one called Appointment with Fear, and I don't think it was directly related, but it just instantly popped into my head now I wonder if that was also in the subconscious of the illustrator who did that illustration. There's tons of villains that have since adopted that. So yes, but thinking back to it, that book, like, you know, it resonates. Certainly you've seen Marvel villains that are, you know, somehow it's stuck with people and go, oh, you know, metal hands will have this, you know, it makes, it's such a great costume. I mean, it is terrifying.
It required a lot of, you know, in universe, it requires a heck of a lot of creativity on the part of Peter Lorre's character to go, what would look freaky that I have laying around my clinic? And this neck brace is a hell of a thing, you know, as presented. He goes, you know, I'll just pretend that I mean, the whole thing is great. And the metal hands, I don't know where in universe where these metal hands would have come from, but they're awesome.
And how he operates them so well.
Sure.
And, you know, like even the business of him coming home and like just sort of ghoulishly laughing as he's taking it all off is, you know, and back to the sort of sadism and kink of the, you know, like him at the theater at the beginning, there is this sort of fetishistic quality to the outfit as well, where it kind of has an S&M vibe.
Yeah, yes. You know, and he's way nuttier now. Now that the voices are talking to him and he's decided to go all in supervillain and try to drive. When you were like involving yourself in a plot to drive somebody crazy so you get their wife, you know, you're way out there on the edge of civilized behavior.
Let's remember too, he's also convinced the guy that he's such a good doctor, or that there is out there such a good doctor you could put somebody's head back on.
That's right.
Like not only construct these amazing prosthetic hands, but I have to wear this neck brace because my neck is still healing because he put my head back on.
Yeah.
That is whoa. That's full deep in business.
Yes.
But he's so convincing that Orlok's like, "Hi, this crazy guy has his head put back on.
Well,
What else can this doctor do?" But I guess he's willing to believe it because he's watched the doctor put his hands back on.
Yes. And there's no, this works on so many levels because it's also, for those of us, you and me, we're like Colin Clive in a sense. We might be smart people, but, we don't really know where the edge of science is. So science can do some amazing things. So why can't they do these other amazing? We don't know what the edge is. So we are vulnerable to these lies and these performances. And so here, interestingly enough, Peter Lorre has become a performer, a genius performer, like the other two characters. At this point, the three main characters of this film are all actors, which is fascinating to me. So that happens, and then the movie kind of winds up really quickly because it's not a very long movie. How do we get to? Okay, well, we come for the.
Well, Colin Clive he does crack. He turns himself in.
Yes, right. They come to arrest him. He goes, "I must have done it because I have evil hands," and he gets taken in. But what causes them? Here's what I don't remember. So Colin Clive is at the police station. Why do they decide, hey, we need to go confront Dr. Gogol? Why did the police decide that?
Before we get to that, we have to remember. So like we said, Yvonne has shown up at his house and says, "I need to talk to him."
Yes.
She's there, and then she sees the weird wax figure in his house. She breaks it. So then she's like, "Oh shit!" And so she throws it out the window. There's this bird, by the way, that's always around. For some reason, there's always birds in these movies. And so she throws it out the window and takes its place. And he comes back from having pretended to be Rollo, and he's like, James Bond villain style, admitting everything that's just happened, like out loud, laughing maniacally, and taking off the brace and everything. And then she's just hearing all this, and he doesn't notice that she's not a human person until the bird flies like across her and she screams. And so then he's like, yeah, right.
Well, he still thinks he's so off his board. He still thinks,
he's a little cray at that point. He's like, you've come alive. What did you say her name was? The goddess Galatea. You've come alive. It's worked. My love has brought you to life, or whatever it is. And then he's like, and you're bleeding. And then he kind of is like, wait a minute. So he realizes that it's her, and he's going to kill her because she's fighting him and not wanting, she's like not wanting to be with him and everything. And so yes, now I don't remember though why the whole crew, including the pianist, have come to see the doctor. Do you guys remember?
I cannot remember why they
It's
decided.
because they think that
I remember.
Healy's character, the reporter, thinks, because he saw the wax figure, he thinks that Yvonne Orlok is having an affair with Dr. Gogol.
But it still doesn't make sense that
Healy puts it all together. I mean, yeah, you're right. He doesn't have some of the details right, but he's like, no. Gogol is responsible for all of this, because all of this is beginning to make sense to me now. So thank God for this reporter.
So they're like, okay, well, let's go check this out. And then they see the figure on the ground, and they think she might be a dead person, but they see that it's a figure, so they're like, okay, no. And then they hear her screaming upstairs. So then they're gonna go. See if they can break in. They're able to break the door, but not the iron gate in front of the door, so they can now see that he's strangling her. And by the way, that was probably the most irritating part for me of the whole film, is that business of, first of all, she faints, which just annoys me. Every time somebody faints of fear, it bothers me a lot. And then she's fainted, so now he's putting this black sash around her neck and like squeezing it, and she just kind of opens her eyes gently, like, what's happening? And I'm like, dude, this is not what you would be doing if you were being choked to death. Like, you would be definitely eyes bugging out, gasping for breath, not just like, what's going on? And then so then they see that he's choking her with the sash, and knife throwing hands take over and throw a knife at him.
Yes.
through the iron gate.
And isn't it lucky
open at that point
that the police, who were curious about like what might really be going on here, went ahead and took their arrested suspect with them. To go confront this other witness.
And somehow let him have knives.
And let him have a knife. Yes.
Well, he jacked a knife from the evidence table.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
But
Thank
like,
you. We did see that happen. Yes.
Because of the way 1930s movies, especially 1930s horror movies, that always die when the monster / bad guy dies.
Thank you. Yep.
I am always left wondering, so did Stephen Orlak ever get his life back in order? Did he ever figure out how to play piano again, or did he go join the circus and become an awesome knife thrower?
Yeah, did he ever learn to control the hands?
Yeah, we don't get to see that.
If he really wanted to wow people, he actually becomes the first knife thrower who can play piano with the knives.
Oh.
It's like what was his name? What was his name? Was it Cage? What was the guy, the pianist name who would do all the sounds? I don't know if he's still around.
Yeah, John Cage. Yeah, he wrote the
John
Firm.
Cage.
And
It could be like that. Like he could use the knives to be.
Yeah,
he used the piano as a percussion.
I'm crap playing, but when I'm playing the piano with knives, I'm really good.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, there's no denouement in this movie at all. When Peter Lorre gets knifed in the back, so that Yvonne is saved. I mean, that's the end. We drop the curtain. I mean, one of the reasons the movie is so short is there's no extra scene. Like, cut to the next Christmas, and finally he's getting like nothing. Yeah,
that's just not how I don't know why that is. That's just not how they rolled back then. They're like, okay, the threat has ended, so everybody lives happily ever after, I guess.
Yeah, it's just evil's defeated. Wrap it up.
Right, you don't even need it really.
Yeah,
and to some extent, I kind of appreciate that. Right, I mean, you compare that with some films we've seen where they'll have a denouement followed by another denouement followed by another.
In this particular movie, I would have liked it mostly because every time I watch it, I find myself worried about Colin Clive. Like, I'm just like, because I feel bad for him because he's just batted around by fate, really. Throughout this entire movie, and then he's fucked with by this mad scientist, and I would just like to think that maybe he was able to figure, and I think Tony, I know how Jamie feels about it because she comments on it every time we watch this movie, and I'm sure Tony probably would agree with this. Like, as a musician, it's a really horrifying idea that you would never be able to play again.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, that's one of those things that just freaks me the hell out.
I was just thinking of something. Imagine if the character of Peter Lorre, who, by the way, has a really swell coat, right, in this movie. I just want to mention his clothes are great. The thing that is weird and frightening, or repulsive, as he says it, about Peter Lorre is just the off-putting intensity. And he does look odd. But let's face it, Peter Lorre was a regular person. He had a spouse. People date people who look strange, so he's Peter Lorre, he's human. But my point is, he's not instantly attractive. So imagine if you took the character of Dr. Gogol and you instead had like Ray Liotta, I don't know, somebody who's like a villain, has intensity, but is also sort of leading man handsome, so that you could have a sort of electrical erotic charge between Dr. Gogol and Yvonne.
Joaquin Phoenix comes to mind more than Ray Liotta.
Sure.
Yeah, Joaquin Phoenix actually would be great in this part.
So pick your poison. Even if it's not acted upon, if you had that extra charge, it strikes me that a lot of these scenes would play slightly differently. Because
absolutely. I think part of it that sells it is you get the impression there is some trauma from he's not part of society.
Yeah.
If he was leading man handsome,
if he's Ray Liotta,
because he's a rich doctor, he's not going to be ostracized in the same way.
It's a good
society.
point.
So
again, I also
part
think
of it.
It's interesting that he, at one point, he implies that he is a virgin and never has known the love of a woman.
Wait, is that true? I don't remember.
No, that's an actual line of dialogue. And
he said that.
I think that's central to this character, and that's why I brought up the incel thing. Is that this is a guy that he's in love with this woman to the point of contempt.
Yeah, you're very right, because he gets mad and he says, "Just because I'm a peasant." At that moment, he's forgetting that she came to him because he's one of the greatest doctors in France, and all of a sudden he's back to you should be in love with me, and you just don't like me because I'm below you.
Well, that's also part of probably we're supposed to get a little bit of that why he treats his nurse so crappily is because of his proclivities and his obsession, his laser focused obsession with this one woman that he's become obsessed with. You know, the nurse being a woman is you're here to help and that's it. Because you aren't possibly this ideal that I can't obtain and yet I'm going to obsess over. And you know, it's a complexity too, because you know, and even myself growing up, you know, I was terrible at like no confidence, anything. And you know, what plays into this a lot of times in your mind is, hey, why would somebody, I'm cool, or I'm a good person, why won't somebody go out with me? And then as you get older, you know, if you are, you know, you continue to grow, you go, oh, well, you know, maybe you lack confidence. Maybe, you know, there's all these reasons, like your introspection goes, oh, okay, well, this is probably why. But for a lot of people, it can turn into this, people don't like me. I'm good, and good is good enough.
Right.
And because does good for these children and for all the people he operates on, to him, I'm sure part of this whole thing is, you know, I do good for the world, and yet I'm still unloved. But the problem is there's so much other stuff in that. You know, he probably lacks confidence because he looks like Peter Lorre in this role, right? He's not, and that's why it probably wouldn't work if he was attractive, because he doesn't have the kind of the extra bit of the other.
Well, but the funny thing about life is, you know, you think of like, I don't know, Edwin. No, that's not the name of the actor. Anyway, the guy in there's like the heavyset guy in Harvey, who the daughter of the family falls in love with, and they're just this really funny couple. The fact is, you could be Peter Lorre and you could be a Mac. He could be funny. He could be charming.
Peter Lorre, when you see Peter Lorre as himself, he doesn't exactly exude self-doubt. Like, that's definitely a character. And while he is weird looking, you know, he is weird looking in a striking way. Like, he's not.
I love it. Freaking got Julia Roberts at one point. So
you can be weird. But what I'm saying is, this character, the reason that he has this obsession and why he is what he is because if you are this person, if you have this personality trait, you don't get to the point, something stunted, so you don't get to the point that it's not the fact that just being good isn't part of why, you know, he's frustrated because why don't people see what I see? But there's so much more to that.
Well, there's also that people don't owe you anything. In other words, everything could be perfect.
Yeah.
And she could still, this is where the incel stuff, right? Is that everything could be perfect. And, you know, she just might not ever be interested in you, Peter Lorre. I'm sorry. You know?
Well, she so much as says that he says, like, it's not even just that I'm married, it's that you frighten me, because there's a darkness in him that she sees in the way that, like, their very first interaction is it's very clear that he's got this. You know, it's not even just that he's perverse, because there's perverse people that are, you know, they have relationships where both, you know, they have kinky relationships and it's fine. It's that he's perverse to the point where, first of all, there's no consent in their relationship. Like you know, you brought up the kiss earlier. He inflicts her friendship on her. Like, there's no permission there. And
you know, but like I was saying, it's not a black and white bad guy thing, because when she says that, I'm you frighten me, I'm not attracted to you, he goes, you're so cruel, but you're cruel to be kind, or whatever the line is.
What an interesting thing to say.
And I was like, that's interesting that he wouldn't just lash out and be like, you're so mean to me, I'm going to hurt you. You know, he's like, okay, I mean, you're trying to, you know, make me understand what's going on. And I'm like, that's what I mean by him being a complex character, is that's
a very good point.
Well,
But
that's that sort of, you do feel bad for him, even though he is a son of a bitch. You know, like he there's that Peter Lorre imbues him with enough patheticness, where even when it's really not until the end where he's like, I think fully like he's torturing Colin Clive and he's about to strangle her. That's like, I'm really like, fuck this guy, because like for most of the movie. You know, Peter Lorre has his sad, you know, he can pull those sad puppy dog eyes, and you feel bad for him.
Well, you know, the other thing I like is it's a good picture of just obsession, because we keep talking about the incel thing, and you know, he has fixated on this one particular woman, and because he's so in his own head, it hasn't dawned on him that there's a million reasons why you don't get to have one person. He might be scary. He might not be scary. He might be John Hamm. You know, she just might not ever come around, and that's just life. And he has not learned those lessons at all.
Well, yeah, then that's usually what part of the problem is. Without a certain introspection and a dose of empathy, it's hard to understand. It's easy to become the victim and hard to understand why that can be. And, you know, that's what he spent time alone, but it's not an introspective per se. And he doesn't, like, you can't just go, oh, well, okay, that person isn't into me. You know, I guess I should move on because maybe there's somebody out there, okay, that sucks, and kind of, deal with it. But because he's so hyper focused, and, this can also happen with a lot of people who are, his brilliance may also lead to that, not only just the God complex, but also, I'm really good at these things. Why am I not, he says that, I'm not good at love, or, it's frustrating to him that he can have it all. He's got a huge house, awesome mansion, but humanity as it stands is baffling to him, even to the point where he's very snide for the woman who's like, when he sees her expensive ring, he's like, well, are you holding out? Kind of, super snide about that. He both wants to be part of humanity, but also sneers at humanity, which is part of why he's also perfectly fine getting a wax figure of his obsession, because, hey, I've got a possession. I've got a version of her that's good enough for now.
Well, have you read about these, the new sex dolls that are like robots with like warm flesh, and people buy them and like dress them up and, eat breakfast with them and stuff.
More advanced than like real doll.
I guess. I mean, I don't know.
There's a movie about a guy who's like introduces his family also to like, hey, here's my real doll, who's my girlfriend, and at that.
Well, and there's the Buffy bot. Buffy.
Yeah, that's true.
No, but this is a real thing, and because I remember there was an article that I read where this couple had introduced this warm doll into their lives. The whole thing is gross, but to some extent, if you had somebody like this and he could have a robot Yvonne and it kept him from going nuts and like threatening people, then I guess maybe that's okay. But instead, what I want is mental health.
It's not.
I'm gonna go ahead and say no to that one.
What I want is for Peter Lorre to get better. I want him to recover from this knife in the back and then appear like 7 years later, suddenly having to save Yvonne from some sudden heart attack and saying, "Oh yeah, I've worked on a lot of things. I'm a totally different person now. Let me fix you up."
Whether or not warm dolls that don't look like anybody are bad, I'm not getting into. I'm saying you can't have a warm doll that looks like a person that really exists.
I'm not saying that is the thing that would bring...
that's not okay.
No. I was getting away from the doll for a second and just saying, I wish all the good things, honestly, for this guy. I hope that he finds, some healing.
You have more empathy for him than I do. Because like, it's even as much as I love him as a sinister character.
Right.
Like I enjoy watching him. He's a great horror movie villain. He tried to strangle Yvonne with her own hair.
Exactly.
True.
Yeah.
And he did murder actually Colin Clive's dad, though.
Yeah, I feel less bad about
it.
Yeah,
yes,
like
that's true. No, he's got a lot.
Well, I mean, that's
an
the
evil
dangerous
man.
part is this is played, definitely for extreme, but if this was a newer movie, I may not would watch it as much because if I see a thriller that is about obsession in a similar way but more realistic, I tend to not watch that because you can kind of see that on the news and you see the outcomes of that.
Yeah.
And it's horrifying. I don't want that to happen to anybody. It could be your cousin, your aunt, your sister, your wife, like that kind of thing. I watch. I don't watch as much of if it's that kind of real. So this is played up a little bit more, and it's kind of a time, and so I can distance that. But modern things, and people go, "Oh, I check this out. Oh, this was terrifying." I'm like, yeah, I don't
mind it
that
if it's so trashy that it's not realistic.
With
No,
this
really.
stylistically, I think it's important to know, and this is why I say this is definitely, even if you're even in the broadest sense, because to me, like when you say thriller, I think of something like single white female, which to me is still a type
of an obsession movie.
Yeah, but it's still a type of horror film. But like this was MGM trying to do a universal horror film.
Absolutely.
Like this is styled like whatever you think about the content, this is styled like a horror film because it's got that elevated operatic quality to it that a more realistic movie would not have.
And again, that's part of why I like this. Like I'm agreeing. Like I agree with you. When I tend to not want to watch if this was modernized in a true crime version of this. I like the brand new Netflix series about a man who's obsessed to like all the you didn't have that operatic quality. That's probably something I wouldn't watch over the past few years. My tastes have changed, so
I can understand that. Yeah,
and again, that's just me. Everybody enjoy whatever you want to watch, but knowing that true crime stuff in general just doesn't appeal to me as much in a world that seems perhaps darker than I would like it to be at that moment.
I think Julia, is that true of you as well? Because I love that stuff. I love like single white female kind of things, and I kind of like true crime kind of stuff. I love trashy obsession movies. But do you feel like no, strikes a little too close to home? Don't want to see that?
Well, it depends. You just named two different things. One is fiction and one is true crime. So when it's true crime, that's when I get freaked out. I'm like, I can't believe that it's hard. It's too scary that there are people who actually go along and act like, because it suddenly do go, well, shit, what if somebody in my life is that kind of crazy that's gonna be homicidal maniac crazy. But when we're talking about fiction, that's the point of horror is often to make you feel scared. I mean, it's just making you feel things. So yeah, if it's terrifying because you're like, wow, that could really happen in real life, then that serves a purpose. Sometimes I like that. Like sometimes I want to have that kind of thrill, and sometimes I'm just like, no, I don't want to feel like afraid like that right now. But when it's actually true crime, it's not what if or maybe, it's that actually happens to people, and there's an example.
Yeah, and I'm talking also more that there's a lot of shows that kind of blur that line where it's realistic enough. But then again, I watched through, even though I kind of went up and down. I've watched Dexter and I watched Hannibal, which is I still can't believe the Hannibal show was on network TV.
See, those are good examples because those were too dark for me. I watched Dexter for the first season and I don't remember how much. And then I just go, you know what? I don't like how I feel when I watch this show. It's just too gross. Same thing happened when watching Medium. They started to do a lot of like child murders. And I was like, no, this isn't, I'm not doing this. Too dark.
I think with Dexter, to me, the reality of that is blunted somewhat, because what that is you have the serial killer who is also like this master detective. Like what if Sherlock Holmes was a serial killer? is
Yeah.
really what
It's
Dexter
backwards.
is.
That's actually backwards. It's that he is a serial killer and he's channeling it to do good because he
Yeah,
wants
but
to be able
but
to
it's
kill.
I'm saying it to me it's that is just as much a detective show as it is a or a horror show or
Right.
a serial killer thing. Hannibal to me also has like this sort of art. It's a lot like this in the fact that
It's
there's
hugely
this
art directed, and I think that's
It's
the difference. That's
very
one of the
beautiful.
differences. But there were episodes where I almost was like, yeah.
Yeah.
But
sorry.
To juxtapose that, though, I think this, even though it deals with a lot of these topics, I'm glad we're covering in this 30s setting because it even is further removed, and it's exactly what you're saying, Drew. It's it's a universal, it's patterned after universal horror in such a way that it's kind of becomes its own thing.
Yeah, well, it's Jason brought up M, which is a couple of years before that. It was Laurie's star turn, and I find that movie to be incredibly hard to watch because it's Laurie plays not only a serial killer but a pedophile, and he's tremendous in it, but it's not a fun movie to watch. Where it's scary but it's fun. People are always like, what's the difference between grimy scary and fun scary? And this to me is fun scary. It's also like, Jason, you're talking about like those sort of like this single white female and Basic Instinct. Those movies are dull to me because like they don't have, and I'm not knocking, like if I know you like them, so this isn't like me saying my taste is superior to yours or whatever, but like what I get interested in is monsters, human monsters or otherwise, and this to me is enough of as a mad scientist movie is enough of that to where it tickles my interests in the ghoulish, whereas like those movies are I don't know what specifically to say what they're lacking, except that there's not a mythic quality to them, where this is mythic, and I like a little bit of that in my horror film. Like I don't necessarily want it to fully take place. Like even Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is a pretty grimy movie, has a kind of fairy tale quality to it,
right?
And I want that when I watch a horror film. Like I don't want I don't want to see the world outside because that's boring.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. That does make total sense.
I agree.
All right. We should get our final thoughts on Mad Love. This has been a really, really fun conversation. So same order as before, and then we'll come around and do endorsements. If anybody has watched anything but the news in the past 50 hours. But let's start with Mr. Tony. Final thoughts on Mad Love.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the movie. I think it's interesting character studies mixed with just enough, Drew coined it, operatic, mythic expanse, things. It's just the side. It's so kind of the opera version of reality. Peter Lorre's great. That getup that he wears is just one of the best art directed villain designs ever. It's perfect, and he plays it so well. Everybody's motivations are interesting and push things forward. It's beautifully shot. I love stepping back to black and white when it's there's a lot of just I'm gonna go, if you're black and white is a problem for you, I'm not gonna tell you have to watch it, but I think you're missing out on a lot of great stuff that especially that has been used really well. I think on Criterion Channel there's a lot of awesome black and white crime drama stuff, noir and like gangstery things, and they tend to be, there's a lot of really artsy stuff there too. I think they're still on Criterion Channel, and that's always great because those directors were really playing with a lot of light and shadow along with gangsters and gunplay, and so you get these artsy things. And different than this movie, but I love going back to black and white when it's, especially the there's just so much cool stuff to go back to and mine and kind of add it to your film knowledge, as well as especially if you're an artist. like I mentioned, like, oh, now that I think about it, I wonder if this book or this movie was influenced the art direction here or there, because I think that's what we're all searching for. I've said it before. If you only ape your contemporaries from the oh, well, when I was 10, or in college I saw my first you name it movie, and I want to make those, especially if some of those directors were not necessarily ripping off, but were riffing on things they had seen. The further you go back, the more you have in your palette as a creator. And that's why you take art history, even though some people go, oh, I don't need to know all that. Like, I think it makes you a richer, it gives you broader conversation, especially in art. And it gives you, like I said, just a broader palette to pull from when you need that extra thing that's going to separate your art. But even if you're not an artist, like, hey, watch some cool stuff that you enjoy.
Very good. Thank you. Julia, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's true. I was definitely one of those people who didn't really want to watch black and white movies or 30s movies or whatever, and I've really been enjoying them. I think they're really they're surprising. Like I say, there's a lot of elements. It's not just overacting and melodrama. There's actually a lot of really interesting stuff and lots of neat atmospheric parts to this film and to a lot of films we've been watching. So yeah, I think I've said everything I know, or someone has said everything that I have thought about this film. But yeah, I'm glad that we watched it.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Drew. This definitely was your baby, so to speak. So, what are your final thoughts? And I mean, this is also the end of our 30s tour for now. So wherever you want to go.
First of all, like, again, I said when I wanted to do a bunch of 30s movies, this was this was probably the most important movie that I wanted us to do, because I think that this is an amazing film. And I was right, because we got an awesome conversation out of it, because there's so much meat to it. And a lot of these 30s movies are hidden gems, and we've had some of my favorite conversations this year over the last few episodes. So I'm just really grateful that once again you indulged me and on these, because I'm never sure how some of these movies are going to go over, but it seems like for the most part everybody got something out of all of the movies we did in this set. So I am pleased. I am, and at the end of a very long, what feels like a very long week, that have like a nice conversation about a movie I love with my friends, that's also just a blessing in of itself.
Oh, that's lovely. Wonderful. I could not add anything to that. Other than I really enjoyed this, and Julia and I both enjoyed it, and we watched it twice, and I cannot believe I'd never seen it before, and thank you for bringing it, and I hope that the audience dug it too. Let's get endorsements. Anything that you might want to share with us that you've been watching and getting into. I know a lot of us have been glued to the news, and I think that we should all be forgiving to ourselves for that, because that's just how the period has been. But having said that, go ahead, Julia. What was it?
No, I'm saying it's important. We weren't just glued to the news for no reason.
Yeah. No, it's a big deal. Had everybody's attention. And all right. So, Tony, though, is there anything that you'd like to endorse this week that's coming up, or that you just watched?
I spend most of my time in escapism. So I was watching like Trailer Park Boys, which I always go back to because it's ridiculous and it makes me laugh. And then some video games. And Ray and I are still playing Animal Crossing. I'm trying to think what else. We started Queen's Gambit, which I've heard really good things about, and the first episode was really good. It's got some darkness in it that again I go back and forth on because it's fairly real. But I thought it was really interesting. Trying to think what else. Something. I'll bring it up here because it's something I meant to share with people, and I haven't even posted on Facebook. But I had this dream the other day, and I woke up with this kind of line in my head, and I'll probably paraphrase it now. I wrote it. It's one of those where you wake up and I know I'm going to lose it if I don't type it into my phone or something. And but it was an anxiety dream. But by the time it ended, there was this the line I had was I hope that man, I wish I had the exact quote, but I hope that the storms are moving away from all of us. So basically, in this dream, a storm had happened and it was rolling back out or away from us. And regardless, that's what I hoped. And that's what I kept thinking of for some reason. And this was several days ago. But I really do, and I don't mean this in a political way. I really do mean this there's a lot going on in the whole world. And I just kept coming back to that this week was, I hope that the storms are moving away from everyone. And that's really, I hope that doesn't sound too pretentious but it really, again, that was, my predominant thought since waking up on, I don't know, it was like Wednesday or Thursday. And, in a way, like when I repeat it, it sounds a little cheesy, but it's definitely what my thinking has. I just hope that that's something that can happen for more and more people. Just as chaos is chaos,
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's kind of rambly, I guess. But that's what's been on my mind more than, watching anything, or just if somehow there could be some peace after a storm. That's what I hope. That's what's been on my mind.
Wonderful. I mean, that's really beautiful. I thank you very much for sharing that. Julia, did you have any endorsements for us?
I cannot remember. I don't think, because we didn't meet last week, right? It was the week before last.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. So I don't think. Well, maybe I can't remember if I talked about the Undoing. Did we talk about the Undoing? Anyway, if I didn't endorse it, then I'm endorsing it. If I did, then I'm endorsing it again.
I don't think you talked about it.
Okay. It is a really good show. It's a mini. I think it's a mini series. Yeah. Or a limited series, I believe they call it. It's on HBO ? Right?
Yes.
I think it's HBO. Yeah, and it's Hugh Grant and Nicole Kidman, and it's so good. I'm really super into it. Unfortunately, it's you can't binge watch it. It's one episode a week, and there was a new one tonight that we haven't watched yet, but we will. But it's really interesting. One of those kind of whodunit mysteries. And I'm really enjoying it. You talked about Animal Crossing. I have been obsessed for months and months, obsessed with a stupid ass game that's called Homescapes on the phone. It's one of those games where it's like the Candy Crush style, match it game, but as you earn as you conquer the levels, you earn points to renovate this awesome huge house. It's really fun. Anyway, I've never bothered to endorse it, but I totally should, because it kind of takes up a very large chunk of my life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm for whatever.
For
whatever works. I have friends that go, "Oh, you'll probably laugh. I like this game or that game." And to me, it's a game. Like, it's not hard for anybody. I don't. Anybody who judges on, casual game. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not everything is whatever competitive thing you like, but yeah. Does it bring you joy? Is it hurting other people, or is it hurting you? That doesn't.
It's probably wasting a little more time than I should waste, but other than that, no.
I mean, that's relative. It's like a friend of mine was talking about. He was kind of like going off on, oh man, people are already putting up Christmas lights, and I wanted to say, this year.
It makes them happy.
Who cares?
Who cares?
If you want to put that up in July, you get a pass. Normally I push it a little bit, but I had another friend who said, I like it because right after Halloween there's nothing, so that's when I do my Christmas stuff. But again, who cares?
Right.
Did it are you cool with that? I mean, I'm down with this year. You get a pass. If it's not hurting anybody and you enjoy it, more power to just do it. Just whatever. Let's just get through things. It's fine.
That also makes me think of how, many times in my life I've gone off on diatribes about, against the culture and all this stuff, right? And I just think this is bad for the culture and stuff. And I've realized that is a waste of my life, honestly, to be concerned that something that somebody else is enjoying is like somehow earning us demerits with God or whatever,
or with other people. Like I saw somebody going off on some things that people. I can't believe people do this in Animal Crossing. I'm like,
who
you don't
that
have to ever interact with them.
And it's occurred to me, and this means that I need to turn this towards myself and realize that I need to stop it when I am tempted to rail against the culture. But like I've told friends before, they're saying, I've been really getting into this. I don't know if it's worth my time. I don't know, blah blah blah. And I'm like, look, this is the phrase. This is what the phrase I want on a T-shirt or on a bumper sticker. And it is, there is no clipboard. There is no clipboard. There is nobody following you around and judging and grading the way you live your life. There is no clipboard. It is your life, and it may end next hour. It may end tomorrow morning. You may not wake up at all. There is no clipboard. There is no grade. There is now, and then there is the next now, and that's it. And so you can do whatever the hell you want. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. And so, which, believe it or not, is actually, I think, a positive thing. So that's
yeah. And the people who are judging, you don't want to know them anyway.
right.
Anyway, why don't we go to the next person?
Well, yes, Drew. Nothing matters, but tell us what your endorsement is.
Nothing matters and everything matters.
Yes.
Exactly.
Nothing matters in a positive way. I'm happy about this. It's not a negative thing. It's a positive thing. Anyway, continue.
Man. So first of all, tomorrow, for some reason, the Halloween Man 20th anniversary sale on Comixology went into November, which,
Sweet.
Hey, good on you, Comixology. But you have until tomorrow at, I believe 7 Central Time to get in on some of those sales prices. So those of you who listen to this and they're saying like, oh, I should read some Halloween Man comics, you still have some chance to get some of those sales prices. So that's cool because it ends after that. It's over. And thanks again to Comixology for doing a 20th anniversary sale. That was cool of you. So lots of things that I have been doing to distract myself from the national shit show. A book that I've been reading, which is partly research and partly for enjoyment, called Trick or Treat: A History of Halloween by Lisa Morton. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's about Halloween, how we got Halloween. It goes in depth into the other cultural observances from different parts of the world that, when imported into America, became what we now know as Halloween. And it is very scholarly and interesting. And I've learned a lot of little bits of folklore that I'm now going to use for writing projects later. So, good writing resource as well as just an interesting book. I also have to recommend the Good Lord Bird, which I feel like is it's an incredible miniseries that Showtime is doing about the abolitionist John Brown, starring Ethan Hawke. And if you haven't been watching that, that is a terrible shame, because it's just been great to watch that, especially during this time period. I've been microdosing episodes of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the one of the more recent series, the 2013 CGI animated series on Hulu is kind of like getting me into my happy place.
So funny.
Yeah.
It's such a good show. Yes.
Yeah, very well done. Very well done. And that, again, the strength of that as an IP, that it's still around, just like it just makes me happy. But better than all of these things, the thing that you should go on Amazon and buy right now, or find wherever it's streaming or whatever, and ignore all other pop culture, because this is better than that, is season 2 of Primal is out. And that is the best show on television. No one is talking about it. I brought it up, I think back in the winter was when they ran part 1. It's an animated series by Samurai Jack guy. I'm blanking on his name. Somebody animated savvy. Tell me, Jindy, last name with a T. I am such a jackass. I can't remember. Jindy Tartanovsky. Am I pronouncing that right? The guy that did Samurai Jack and Powerpuff Girls. You know his work. This is a show about...
Jindy, you said it right. It's Tartakovsky.
Okay. This is a caveman and a dinosaur who both have lost their families team up to survive in a pulpy, lost, world setting or prehistoric setting, and they do more in 20 minutes than most shows do in an hour, and they have no dialogue. And there are episodes of this show that are so beautiful I weep. Like, I am filled with awe and envy because I know I will never make anything as good as the show. None of us will. Like, everything, all of pop culture this has been won. Primal wins pop culture. We should all just quit because like my admiration, I know this sounds crazy because I'm talking about a dinosaur show, and I guess I love dinosaurs a lot, but my admiration for this show and how much it accomplishes with so little is just ridiculously deep. Like, I just think this is a beautiful, amazing show. It should be winning every award that it can win. And I feel sad that almost nobody on the internet seems to be talking about it. So, like, stop what you're doing and watch Primal. And
Weird because since I work with animators, like in an animation studio, everybody's just like, everybody's talking about it. So it's strange to me because it also debuted. They showed a huge chunk of it at Fantastic Fest last year.
Oh, so good.
If I still have posters, I'll get them to you.
Oh man, I just, again, I'm filled with both envy and admiration, and like even the envy is rooted in admiration because it's just great stories, simply told. Like, all of us as writers should learn that we do so much bullshit that can be accomplished with so much more simplicity. Like, so like I feel like I learn a lot about storytelling from watching this show. Like, I'm so in awe of it. And I know I'm like gushing, but like, my God, is this a fantastic feat of animation? Like, I love it.
Great.
I'm done now.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a good tip. Primal. All right. That is more enthusiasm than I've heard anybody have for really any work in the past year. So that's pretty strong. So I feel like I gotta get back to the Venture Brothers and finish that before I get into anything new.
Also good.
Yeah, I know, and I know it came to an end, and I was so impressed with that. So, but good tip.
Not really. Like Metalocalypse, they just said you're done, so it hasn't really ended. Which is
I'm holding out hopes that they'll somehow save the Venture Brothers. Like,
I'm sure they'll figure out a way.
I think that is a show that also got better every season. And
that show makes me angry at the writing because it's so good.
It's so good. I know exactly.
Good world building on that show too. Like, far better than a spoof show is even necessary. Like, the level of detail and all the world building.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, wonderful. And I have no endorsements this week. I haven't accomplished anything, and that is my good.
Your endorsement is to endorse my endorsement of Primal.
Very good. Yes. I endorse the enthusiasm with which Drew endorses Primal. So wow. All right. Thank you very much. This was such a blast. I loved talking about Mad Love, and I can't wait to be back next with whatever is next. According to our schedule, supposedly next week is, I cannot believe I'm getting you guys to watch, The Initiation of Sarah, which is
Is this a porno film? But that sounds like it might be a porno film.
It's not a porno film. It's another Satanic Panic movie, but it's fitting into a short retrospective that I'm calling Creepy School, where we'll do Initiation of Sarah and The House on Sorority Row, which is good. Her House on Sorority Row is good. Tony knows that one quite well. And Julia, you will love it because it has Eileen Davidson in the cast. So there we go.
Cool.
Yeah.
I have to say, when you said, when I said, is this a porno film? Your rebuttal of that, you sounded a bit like you were I doubt it was intentional, but you sounded a bit like you were channeling our new president, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
It was a bit Biden-esque.
I thought the same thing. No, man.
Come on, Drew, that's a bunch of malarkey.
Although, even though because I think everyone should have a sense of humor about things. Somebody brought it up earlier, and I really do hope. I don't know how they would do it because he's not vice president, so there's more at stake. But regardless, The Onion, while he was vice president, ran basically. Joe Biden was Uncle Joe. And so there's all of these articles about him giving tours of the White House while smoking up and like polishing his Trans Am while shirtless. And the Uncle Joe character during that whole presidency.
I hope they bring that
back. One of the best things that The Onion did, because it just, times are different, and I don't know if it works if he's the president, because there's more like the whole thing was, hey, behind the scenes Uncle Joe is doing this or that. But I will say that in a world full of humor and absurdity, I would be totally fine if we get, look, Uncle Joe is back, parks Trans Am, lives in the Winnebago out front, that kind of thing, because it was really funny.
It was a great character.
I thought it was a great gag.
That was the same character really that Jason Sudeikis played when he played this character.
I'm curious what SNL. They've had the revolving door of Biden's. Like certainly they all had their charms, but I'm wondering. Surely now that the era of Alec Baldwin as Trump is over, surely they're not going to keep doing, like, I would imagine it's going to end up being one of the main cast who goes on to be Biden permanently when they spoof Biden, and I'm curious to be who that'll be. No, I think that's because like, we're not going to be seeing Alec Baldwin as Trump for too much longer. So I think that's like that. It's a sign of the era that we were. I could be wrong. God knows Lauren Michaels has.
It depends on if they're going to go with this new theory of that it's worth the extra budget for them to spend money on some more expensive non-regular cast members to do a regular gag. If they feel like they're getting a payoff because more people are watching and that drives up their advertising, then they'll keep getting Jim Carrey to do Biden.
I do like Jim Carrey. I also liked what was his
Sudeikis? I can't believe he's the one who did it before.
Not Sudeikis, although he was funny. Why am I blanking on this? Woody Harrelson. I thought Woody Harrelson was a funny Biden.
Interesting. Left no impression on me, but I have no doubt that there is truth to what you say. All right, but I know that we've worn out our welcome by now. Everybody, go watch Primal, and Joy and I are going to catch up on the latest episode of The Undoing. Have a fantastic evening, and thank you very much. Come to the Facebook page. Let us know what you thought of Mad Love, and we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Night.
Good night.
Bye.